I'm here at the Crumbs Doilies shop in Soho, and here at C&D, one of the things people love most about our cupcakes is the buttercream. It's really soft and whippy, it's the perfect consistency, and I get loads of questions from you guys about how to make brilliant buttercream, and so I thought I would make a recipe video to go step by step through making buttercream, giving you some helpful hints and tips to get you guys making perfect buttercream every time. Perfect buttercream starts with the perfect butter, of course, and I use an unsalted French butter which has a really high fat content. This one here that we use is about 82% fat, so when you're looking for butter, look for one with a high fat content. It will usually say it on the label. The next thing you need to do is to get your butter to the right softness. So ideally you do this by leaving your butter out overnight in a nice kind of cosy room. If you've forgotten to do that, or it's an emergency baking situation, you can soften your butter in the microwave. So you just want to do this 10-second bursts at a time, moving it about in between each burst until it gets to the right softness. Now the right softness is a squeezable softness. So your butter should be soft enough to squeeze but kind of hold its shape as well. Now what you might find is if you live in a hot country or you've left your butter by a roaring fire or something similar, that it has gone a little bit too soft, and this is an example of butter that is too soft to make icing with, really. Now you can see this butter has a slightly kind of oily sheen, and it's not going to have any structure to hold the air, and so you'll end up with loose runny buttercream. And if you do have this situation, then you can just whack that butter in the fridge for a few minutes before you start, just to firm it up a little bit. Now once you've got your butter perfectly soft, it's time for the whip. Now I'm going to be making enough buttercream to ice 1 dozen regular sized cupcakes with a piping bag. If you need to make more icing, then just multiply your quantities by the number of dozens of cupcakes that you're making. I have 150 grams of soft unsalted butter here, and that goes into the mixer, and I'm going to beat that for at least 5 minutes. One of the things people ask us a lot at Crumbs Doilies is how do we get our buttercream so white, and what do we put in it to make it so white? And the answer is nothing particular. We don't use any kind of whitening agents or anything. It literally is beating it for a long time. So we start off by beating the butter for at least 5 minutes until it goes really nice and pale. Now, after just 5 minutes of beating, this is looking absolutely perfect. So it's got a kind of really smooth, silky consistency. And if you compare whipped butter with unwhipped butter, it is completely different in colour and also volume. It's volumised quite a bit because of all the air we've put in. Now that we've got our butter to exactly the right consistency, it's time to add the icing sugar, or confectioner's sugar, or powdered sugar it's also known as, and I've got 340 grams of that here. It's important to sieve it at least once to get rid of any lumps. When you're looking for icing sugar, look for a brand which uses maize starch as an anti-caking agent rather than tricalcium phosphate. That'll give you a much smoother finish and help you avoid that grainy textured buttercream. Now that we've sifted our icing sugar, it's time to put it into our whipped butter. Now regardless of how much icing I'm making, I always add it in 2 stages, beating for about 3 or 5 minutes between each addition. Now, the reason I do that is to help the butter incorporate nice and evenly, and also it helps give it a bit of extra time to whip up some air into it. If you're using an electric mixer, it's really important to start this off on a low speed, otherwise your icing sugar is going to go everywhere. You can see that the butter and the sugar have combined, so now I'm going to turn it up to a medium to high speed and let it do its thing. So what you're looking for at this point is that the icing has gone nice and smooth, and it's pale, and it's just really lovely and whippy. So now it's ready to have the next lot of sugar put in. So again, beat this for 3 to 5 minutes, and then it's time to add the liquid. So now that that's had another 5 minutes beating, it's gone a really nice, smooth, velvety, fluffy consistency, but it is a little bit stiff. So now is the time to get the correct consistency by adding liquid. And I'm going to be making vanilla buttercream. So I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract to about 3 or 4 tablespoons of whole milk. If you want to see more about the different kinds of vanilla extracts that are available, you can click on the link now. So I'm going to start adding the milk in. I'm not going to put all of it in because some of you might be living in a hot country and therefore your icing is already a little bit softer. You might not need all the liquid, but you can't take it out once you put it in. So I'm going to put maybe 3 tablespoons in. And also this is a good opportunity to add any other flavours that you've got, or colour as well. If you want to make all your whole batch of buttercream like blue, this is a great opportunity to add that colour. So I'm going to speed the mixer up and beat that together for about 3 or 4 minutes just to get all the milk incorporated with the butter and sugar. Once it's been mixing for a couple of minutes, it's a good idea to get a spatula in there just to scrape the sides of the bowls, because especially if you're using a freestanding mixer like this, there's often bits of butter at the bottom that haven't quite made it in. This is also a really good opportunity to test the consistency to see if you need to add any more milk. And what you're looking for is a nice, spreadable, soft consistency that isn't too kind of loose and floppy that it doesn't hold its shape. So I think this one needs about half a tablespoon more milk. Now that is the perfect consistency. So it's really pale, as you can see, almost white. So this is white vanilla Crumbs Doilies buttercream right here. And it's lovely and smooth and silky. And it is smooth enough that it will spread really, really well and hold its shape. And it's not gonna drip off my cake or run down the sides. It's gonna hold a nice shape if I pipe it, and it's gonna keep its shape if I spread it. And I'll just show you a bit on a bit of grease proof how easy it is to spread. Okay, so we've made lovely white smooth buttercream and it looks delicious, but you might want to make different colour icing, and there's a couple of ways to do that. First of all, I would always recommend using colour pastes such as these ones. The reason is they are very, very concentrated, so you don't need very much of it to get the right colour, whereas if you use liquid colour, it does change the consistency quite a bit and you might end up with runny icing. If you wanted to make your whole batch of icing the same colour, then you'd add your colour paste in with the milk and then pour the milk in, and that way the mixer will help distribute all the colour really evenly. But if you wanted to make one batch of icing lots of different colours, then what you would do is to take out some of your icing. Now the one slight downside of using the colour paste is that sometimes, depending on what brand you use, the paste can be quite thick and quite difficult to incorporate with the rest of your icing. So what I like to do sometimes is to take a small amount and put it in a little bowl, and then mix my colour paste into that to create a very concentrated paste. And that's going to make it much easier to evenly mix the colour through the icing. So there we go, really nice evenly coloured blue buttercream. And while you're using your buttercream, it's important to keep it covered, because otherwise it'll go crispy around the edges and you'll stir that back into your icing and end up with horrible crispy nuggets in it. You can keep your buttercream for up to 5 days at room temperature in an airtight container, but I would always recommend making your icing as fresh as possible. So I hope you found this helpful and that it's answered some of your questions about buttercream, and if you do have any more questions, then pop them in the comments box below and I'll do my best to answer them. And if you'd like some techniques on how to use buttercream, then I have done a couple of videos and you can click on the links to see those now. And tune in next week, because I'm going to be showing you a really cool technique to use buttercream to give a really great finish on your layer cakes. In the meantime, if you do make any of these things, then please tag me using #CupcakeJemma on Instagram and Twitter, because I love seeing you guys making my stuff. And I'll be back next week with another recipe, so see you then. Bye!